Hello everyone, Ember Power here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one I'm going to be taking a look at a very fun rogue deck that I've been enjoying playing on the Pokemon TCG Live ladder, and that is going to be Lucario, Gardevoir, Moltres, Basket Legion. So the deck is based around Lucario from Brilliant Stars. It has a really nice ability, Roaring Resolve, that allows you to once in your turn place 2 damage counters on it. If you do, you get to search your deck for fighting energy and attach it to Lucario. And then Aurora Sphere Volley is doing 10 damage, and then you have to discard all fighting energy from Lucario, and you do 60 more for each energy you discarded in this way. So for 2 energy, you can 1-hit KO Mirraidon, and Mirraidon seems to be super popular on the ladder, faced a lot of it in casual and ranked, so Lucario just seems like a really solid pick right now. Unfortunately, stuff like Gardevoir and Lugia do resist fighting types, so I believe Gardevoir resists fighting types, but Lugia does at least, so there's this like awkward stance where you can hit for weakness on some very popular decks, but of course some other decks can also just kind of like hoover you, and it can be really awkward to beat. However, we do have Moltres in the deck with the Malevolent Charge ability. It says once in your turn when you play this card from your hand onto your bench, you may attach up to 2 dark energy from your hand to this Pokemon. And then Fiery Wrath for 2 dark and a colors will allow you to do 20 damage and then 50 more for each price card your opponent has taken. So it's a really solid attacker in the late game, but it is also just really good against stuff like Gardevoir as well as Mew VMAX. So if those decks see an increased amount of play post rotation, then Guard Moltres is a worthy tech card. But as for like the main draw engine / wave accelerating energy, we also play the Shining Arcana Gardevoir, which will allow us to, once in our turn, we can look at the top 2 cards of our deck. We can attach any number of basic energy cards we find there, attach into our Pokemon. But if we don't want to do that, we can obviously just attach the rest of the cards to our hand. So we just basically get to pick up 2 cards, or we get to accelerate energy. So Shining Arcana is very versatile in that regard. It does have an attack Brainwave that does 60 damage, so I guess if we really need to use this attacker in a pinch, but it won't be modified with damage. So yeah, we're not aiming to attack with Gardevoir, we're just kind of playing it in the deck to allow us to, draw more cards and accelerate some additional energy. We do also play 3 copies of, 3 copies of Colia with the ability Refinement that says you must discard a card from your hand in order to use ability. Once in your turn, you may draw 2. So if you get a bunch of these out in play, you can effectively have this mini draw engine set up, which is just really helpful. We also play 1 copy of Manaphy with Wave Veil just to prevent damage done to our bench, because there is a decent amount of Urshifu again on the ladder for some reason, so Wave Veil can definitely help with those matchups, and we do damage ourselves, so if we have several Lucario that are all kind of doing damage themselves, spread decks can take multiple prizes at once, which is very problematic, and it just gives you a bit more of a life, I guess, against stuff like Radiant Greninja, although Lost Zone realistically is just destroying you anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but yeah, definitely helps with that bench damage. We also play a 1/1 line of the Basket Legion, which is a really solid attacker that came around later on. Oh, wait, maybe this came around in Brilliant Stars as well, actually. But I thought this card came out later. But anyway, it has the attack Upstream Spirits for 0 energy, so we don't have to spend an energy to use this attack. It does 20 damage for each basic energy card in our discard pile, and then we get to shuffle those in. So Lucario itself burns through a lot of fighting energy, and then Gary Moltres will need 3 energy, of course, so they're very squishy Pokemon, so they'll often be, dying with their energy attached as well. So it means that in the mid to late game, we're typically going to have a lot of our energy in the discard pile, so being able to just swing with Upstream Spirits is really solid. So it just gives us an option for a more efficient attacker in the mid to late game. So as for the trainers, we do play 1 copy of Judge for some additional disruption. It's like a decent supporter mid to late game when you have stuff set up. It's not that powerful early game unless it's disrupting your opponent, but still a decent one-off to include. We also play a copy of Raihan, which will just allow us to accelerate a basic energy from the discard pile, so it's just additional energy acceleration, which will help with powering up Lucario, as well as being able to tutor any 1 card out of the deck. We also play 4 Level Ball for consistency reasons. We also play a Miriam to allow us to recycle Pokemon as well as energy. Well, we don't get energy back with Miriam, but we do shuffle up to 5 Pokemon, so, we can get back Lucario lines and stuff because we play a very thin line. And it will also allow you to draw 3 cards, so if it's a very thin deck and you need to hit something like a Choice Belt, for instance, then Miriam can be pretty good for that as well. We also play 2 copies of Clara as well. Now, this was taken from a Japanese list, and I found that they were playing Clara and Miriam, which I questioned at first, and then having seen it and testing, yeah, Clara is definitely needed. It just allows you to pick up a Riolu and a Lucario, and then 2 basic fighting energy. Or if you really want to, it can pick up a Galarian Moltres and something else, then plus 2 dark energy that you might discard earlier on, so Clara with Galarian Moltres is really solid. We also play 1 copy of Serena, which will act as another gusting effect, but also just a bit of a draw supporter as well, which is always helpful. We also play 3 Ultra Ball because we don't have Evolution Incense anymore, so we need a way to find our Stage 1 Evolution Pokemon. 4 copies of Research. I went for Professor Sada because Lucario feels very ancient in a way. It doesn't feel like a futuristic Pokemon, so I kind of went for Sada in that regard. We also then have 2 copies of Cynthia's Ambition, I believe. Draw cards until you have 5 in your hand, and if anything was knocked out, draw up to you have 8. Typically, our opponent will be taking a KO roughly every turn if everything goes smoothly for them, so Cynthia's Ambition is just very helpful in that regard. We also play 3 copies of Choice Belt just to allow us to do plus 30 damage to Vs. There is still plenty of V Pokemon to see play, and this will allow us to just get easier KOs sometimes on those V Pokemon as well, especially ones that are weak to us, so Choice Belt definitely helps out a bunch. And then we have 1 Boss's Orders to switch 1 of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. And then the energy is pretty self-explanatory, 12 fighting because we need the basic fighting energy for Lucario, and then 4 dark for the Galarian Moltres. If anything, to be honest, what I might try and do is do a bit more testing and see if Galarian Moltres doesn't need to be in the deck, remove it, and swap it out for something like a Radiant Charizard maybe, or maybe like a heavier line of Lucario, maybe run the new Lucario from the Scarlet and Violet set, and then maybe the Koraidon EX potentially. And then if I really need an answer to Mew, then I could play Drapion, which just seems decent, also gives me access to Sky Seal Stone, so there is definitely a lot of different avenues you can go down this route. You know, you can do a lot of different things with Lucario and fighting types in general, so definitely glad that it's turned out to be a very solid deck to play. So if you have any thoughts, queries, questions, then do let me know down below. It's been Emerald Power, and yeah, thank you for watching.